Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Samsel33 here, and welcome to the show about Pokemon TCG stuff, mix-up, and today we have the set review of Pokemon X and Y, the very first X and Y set, to be released outside of Japan, as it always is. So yeah, X and Y is personally, in my opinion, one of the most exciting sets we've had in a while. There's a lot of interesting cards, a lot of decks become viable, a lot of new decks created. There's just a lot of really cool cards in this set that I think will definitely impact our format a lot. You notice I am a little sick, as it may sound. Yes, I'm sick again, and it sucks. And I don't like it, but it's what's happening. I'm sick, so get used to it for the next 20 minutes or however long this video is. So yeah, continue. I don't even know. Watch the video. I can't do these sections at all. Just go.
So let's start off with the grass types. First, there's, well, the big one. Okay, there aren't any good grass types in this set. You'd think with a great set like this one, there'd be at least one, but nope, they all suck. Sorry, Chestnut fans. Oh wait, there are none! So our first fire type card is going to be Delphox. Delphox has a great support ability, and a solid attack. Its ability is called Mystic Fire, which lets you draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. Basically a beefed up Electrode. Even though it's a Stage 2, I think that Stage 2 decks will play Delphox over Electrode, because those 2 extra cards are definitely worth the extra effort. Decks that need the space will probably stick with Electrode. Its attack is also great. It does 50 damage plus 20 for each fire energy on it. So basically Secret Sword for fire types. Since it's a Stage 2, it shouldn't be the main attacker of your deck, but combined with Mystic Fire, it's definitely a good card in Emboar decks. With this card, Emboar might be equal to Blastoise, if not better. I can definitely see Delphox being played in Rayquaza Emboar. Come to think of it, Emboar Rayquaza Delphox is basically Magnezone Emboar. It has Mystic Fire, which is the same as Magnetic Draw, and Rayquaza is basically Rayquaza and Deoxys Legend, and you have Lightning Energy. Huh. Greninja is up next, and since it is clearly the best starter in Kalos, it must be the best card. And it arguably is. Its ability is definitely one of the most unique in this set. Water Shuriken lets you discard a water energy from your hand, and put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. 30 extra damage on any of your opponent's Pokemon is a really great effect. In something like Empoleon that isn't able to one-shot your opponent's Pokemon, and has Dusknoir, Water Shuriken would be a great thing to have. The only problem is you have to draw water energy every turn, which isn't exactly consistent. But even if you don't get one every turn, the ability is still very strong. Raichu has the nice perk of being the only above average lightning type that has a reasonable attack cost. For 2 colorless, it does 20 damage times the number of bench Pokemon you have. Only needing a DCE to do 100 is quite powerful, especially against those flying types that are weak to lightning. Any deck that has trouble with Lugia or Yveltal EX should definitely consider this card. Time to look at one of the best cards in the set. Thought Gothitelle was a dumb card? Well, get ready for 3 more years of it, but better! That card is Trevenant. Trevenant's ability says that if it's active, your opponent can't play trainers. As I said, it's the same as Gothitelle's ability, but it's a Stage 1. How ridiculous is that? With this card, a Selgor is much faster, and it can afford to run more Pokemon, such as Garbodor to cover Virizion EX. This card's so easy to put in any deck, I wouldn't be surprised if any random old deck started playing this card just to slow down the opponent. Really, who the heck is excited for this card? It's just straight dumb. One card you may not have noticed from this set is Dugtrio. For 1 energy, it does 60 damage and 10 to each of your bench Pokemon. This Pokemon is pretty much just good as a sort of splashable way to KO fighting weak Pokemon. It can one-hit KO Bouffalant, and with a Silver Bangle it can one-shot Thundurus and Darkrai. Since Terrakion is sort of unreliable, Dugtrio might be a better choice for some decks. At first glance, Malamar looks like a really hilarious and annoying card. And while it can be hilarious, it might not be as annoying as once thought. Its first attack is called Mental Trash, which makes your opponent flip 4 coins. For each tails, they discard a card from their hand. And you can also use Victini to reflip those coins, and get rid of as many cards as possible. With the new red card and Getsis, you might be able to thin your opponent's hand down enough to get rid of their whole hand, if you flip enough tails. It may be a little inconsistent, but what hilarious deck isn't? Oh right, Durant. The next card is Yveltal, one of the mascots of X and Y. And if you remember how amazing Reshiram and Zekrom were at the time, you'd think that Xerneas and this card would be just as powerful. Well, both are solid, but not too format breaking. For 1 Dark Energy, it has Oblivion Wing, which does 30 damage and you can attach a Dark Energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. My first thought with this card was, why not just use Junk Hunt to get a laser and a Dark Patch? But with Yveltal, there aren't as many prerequisites to its attack. Just discard a Dark with Ultra Ball or Juniper, and there you go. Yveltal can also put energy onto non-Dark Pokemon. Yveltal is also much bulkier, and can take a few more hits. I definitely don't think Yveltal will replace Sableye, because Sableye is much more versatile, but Yveltal still might be a one-of in Darkrai decks, or more if you play non-Dark Pokemon. And once Sableye is rotated, Yveltal will definitely be very strong. Aegislash is an interesting card, or should I say cards. There are 2 Aegislashes in this set that both have the ability Stance Change, which lets you switch an Aegislash on the field with one in your hand. Let's hope they have good attacks. The sword form is okay. It does 120 for 4, which isn't very solid. But the big one is the shield form, which has the attack King's Shield. For 4 energy, it does 50 damage and you're immune to all damage next turn, but you can't use King's Shield next turn. While your first instinct is to switch to the other Aegislash next turn, most likely the best use for this card is just to use Keldeo with Floatstone to rush in and use the attack again. If your opponent doesn't have a way to hurt Aegislash, you can literally just win the game by pulling off this combo. Obviously, there are a lot of ways to get around this, Red Signal, G-Booster, lasers, but there are still plenty of decks and players that will get walled by this card. It also only does 50 damage, which is pathetic, so the only way you'll be able to win is to completely lock them. These cards probably aren't very playable, but it might be one of those cards that breaks the format and wins the regionals one day. Dragonite. So with XY, there are a couple new mechanics introduced in this set, the first of which is Fairy types! There's nothing special about them, unlike the Dragon types. They're weak to metal and resistant to dark, and Dragon types will be weak to them. One nice thing about them is that they have reprints of every ridiculous support Pokemon in Black and White that were in other types, and in most cases they're even better. The most ridiculous of them all is Aromatisse, which lets you move around Fairy Energy as much as you want. What is with this set? First Gothitelle is a stage 1, and now Hydreigon? Well, in this case, Hydreigon has a really good attack, and Aromatisse has a terrible attack. While Fairy might not have as good support as Dark, being a stage 1 makes this card so much faster and gives you a lot more space in the deck. The worst part is this is only the first Fairy type. If we get more good Fairy types in the future, Aromatisse will certainly be paired with them. The next amazing support Pokemon is Slurpuff. This one has another carbon copy ability from another really good Pokemon. This time, it's only taken from a basic EX as opposed to a stage 2. That ability is Sweet Veil, which prevents your Pokemon with Fairy Energy attached to be affected by special conditions. Yep, Virizion EX. But yet again, it doesn't have the attack and it's a stage 1, so it is much weaker than Virizion. Aromatisse will most likely run Rainbow or Prism Energy, so they might just run Virizion over Slurpuff anyway. Looking at Slurpuff again, it might not be the amazing card it looked at first glance. The final Fairy support Pokemon is Xerneas. This one's not an exact copy of any card, but it is very similar to Victini EX. For 1 Fairy Energy, you search your deck for 2 Fairy Energy and attach them to 2 different bench Pokemon. With Aromatisse, you can move those to any of your Pokemon on the next turn, and very swiftly use any attacker you want. Aromatisse and Xerneas are a very strong combo, and I expect them to be used with every Fairy type in the future. You might be wondering what Fairy attackers we have in this set. Well, you'll have to wait until the EX section to see the only good Fairy attacker in this set. For our final regular Pokemon, we have Furfrou. It's very similar to Bouffalant, but it's a bit different. It has the same ability as Bouffalant, but 10 less HP, so it's slightly less tanky. Its attack still costs 3 energy, but does 80 damage, and if you flip the heads, you can discard an energy on your opponent's active Pokemon. There are a lot of cards that allow it to 2-hit KO EXs, and being able to discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon can be game-changing. Since it costs so much energy, it might not be too playable, but again, that discard is very nice. Now onto the trainer cards in this set. We'll start off with the supporters, the first of which, and pretty much the only good one, is Shauna. Shauna is the first solid draw card we've had in a while. Shauna's effect is shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 5 cards. It's basically a nerfed Professor Oak's new theory. People have been asking for a draw supporter with little drawback for quite some time now, and I honestly never expected it to be printed. but in reality, it doesn't have that powerful of an effect. We're so used to drawing so many cards with Juniper and Chorus that 5 isn't that much. But unlike those two, as well as N, there is zero drawback to this card. I think decks that don't like using either Juniper, N, Chorus, or Skyla will definitely play a Shauna or two in their place. Kind of like Bianca, except pretty much infinitely better. Shauna is definitely a very solid card that I expect to be played in a wide variety of decks. Sadly, there are no more consistency supporters except for the Juniper reprint Sycamore, but there are still a couple of other supporters in the set. The first is Cassius. It lets you choose one of your Pokemon and shuffle it into your deck. It's not quite as good as a Super Scoop Up without a flip, but it's still a good effect. It can totally heal one of your Pokemon, and if that Pokemon's active, it lets you switch it with one of your bench Pokemon. It's also great for cards like Jirachi EX and Execute if you happen to start with them. Or in Jirachi's case, if you've already used it, you can use it again. It can also work for Pokemon like Victini EX that are useless after you use them, and they're a pretty big liability. So this card does have a lot of uses, but being a supporter, it might not be worth playing in a lot of decks. Team Player Gun also has a very good effect, but is still a supporter that doesn't draw you cards. It lets you discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. As I said with Furfrou, discarding an energy is very painful for your opponent. One interesting combo is to use Sableye to Junk Hunt Dowsing Machine to use Team Flare Ground repeatedly. I think overall its effect is not worth your supporter for the turn, and unless you're playing Magnezone, I don't think Team Flare Grunt will be played much. Next is the item cards, the first of which is Evo Soda. Frankly, I really don't like this card. It lets you search your deck for a Pokemon that evolves from one of your Pokemon, and you put it on that Pokemon. But you can't use it on a Pokemon that was put into play this turn, or if you've already evolved that Pokemon this turn. The reason I don't like this card is because almost all of the time you can just search out the Pokemon with another ball card. In almost all cases, Ultra Ball or Level Ball will be much better and much more versatile. Now for decks that play a lot of evolutions, or really can't take the discard of Ultra Ball, playing an Evo Soda or two might be somewhat solid, especially if the deck is heavily focused around Skyla. Not a big fan of this card, but maybe if Pokemon continues to not print good Pokemon search cards, Evo Soda might be the best we'll have in a couple years. Speaking of lackluster replacements, our next card is Max Revive. Max Revive lets you search your discard for a Pokemon and put it on the top of your deck. This card has its benefits over Super Rod and the Revive we had in Black and White, but for the most part it's worse than both of them. Getting one Pokemon as opposed to any combination of 3 Pokemon and Basic Energy is a really big downgrade. And since it goes on the top of your deck instead of your hand, it barely makes it any more consistent than Super Rod, unless you play a Pokemon that draws you cards. Once Super Rod is rotated, Max Revive will be a decent substitute, but for now Super Rod is just so much stronger. Okay, what the heck, there's gotta be some good trainers in this set. Don't speak too soon, because our next card is Professor's Letter, which lets you search your deck for 2 Basic Energy and put them in your hand. Why? Just why? Since when was Energy Search a bad card? With Skyla, that card has seen a lot of play in recent years, but then they printed this thing and completely outclassed it. Do I even need to say anything? I guess Blastoise and Ember get a bigger boost from this card because they can search out energy very quickly, but in general, almost every deck will play this card, and if you have any doubt of that, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Red card is a very interesting, well, card. It forces your opponent to shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 4 cards. People are very mixed on this card. Some people think it will ruin the format, and some think it's really overhyped. While I don't think it will destroy the game, I think red card is fairly solid. After you play an N, or they use Tropical Beach, making their hand size smaller can definitely make a difference sometimes. Do I think every deck should play 3 or 4 copies of this card? Absolutely not. It gives you no advantage in board position, and is entirely luck based as to what your opponent draws. I think Darkrai especially should play at least one of it, but any deck can play 1 or 2 of them if it has the space. This card does open up a lot of potential lock decks though. Both Trevenant and Malamar can really get good use out of this card, and any other Disruption deck really. I think red card will definitely show up from time to time in tournaments. However, our next card probably won't. That card is Roller Skates. Roller Skates lets you flip a coin, and if heads, you draw 3 cards. Obviously this card is way too inconsistent for this to ever be played, but it's not something to be taken lightly. Drawing 3 cards with an item is really good, and can get you a giant hand pretty quickly if you flip a couple heads. 99% of the time, Bicycle will be much better, but again, it's actually pretty powerful if you flip heads. Then again, Crushing Hammer and Catcher are too. Our next card is a reprint of a really old card that no one remembered. That card is Super Potion. Super Potion lets you heal a Pokemon for 60 damage, then discard an energy on that Pokemon. So it's an odd middle ground between Potion and Max Potion. That 30 extra HP can definitely affect the outcome of a game, and having those extra energy can also affect the outcome of the game. But the same argument can be made from the other side as well. It really depends on the deck, but I think there are a lot more decks that would prefer the extra healing of Super Potion and can take the 1 energy discard, but might not want to discard all of the energy with Max Potion. Only testing will tell if this card will be worth it in certain decks. Now, this set may seem pretty power creepy already, but you haven't seen nothing yet. Our next card is Muscle Band. Muscle Band is a tool that makes the Pokemon it's attached to do 20 more damage. I would tell you about how good this card is, but you can already see how good it is. You can literally just name any random deck or attacker, and 9 times out of 10 it will greatly benefit from Muscle Band. Genesect? Benefits. Lugia? Benefits. Trubbish? Benefits. Latias? Benefits. Aselgor? Benefits. The only decks that don't benefit from Muscle Band are Blastoise and Darkrai, since it already has Dark Claw. And I guess no one wants those decks to get better, so I guess this card is good for that. But really, this card is just dumb. Whoever made this card needs to seriously rethink their life. Next up is Hard Charm, which is another tool that's basically better than a previous one. Well, sort of. This card gives the Pokemon it's attached to 20 defense to all of your opponent's attacks. So for the most part, it's just Eviolite that works on evolved Pokemon. But read the wording on that again. This one specifically only states your opponent's attacks, as opposed to Eviolite, which just states attacks. Eviolite hasn't seen much play recently, and with the rise of Muscle Band, tool scalper counts will probably go up, so Hard Charm probably won't be seeing much play for a while. Now onto the stadiums. There are 2 of them, and both of them support the 2 types that already have by far the most support. The first one is Fairy Garden. This card gives all Pokemon with Fairy Energy attached to them free retreat, so it's like Dark Cloak in Stadium form. The question is Dark Cloak better in ability form or Stadium form? As a Stadium, it can counter other Stadiums, still work under Garbotoxin, and doesn't take up much space on your bench. As an ability, it can't be countered by Stadiums, and you have the option to use Night Spear. Honestly, since the highest played Fairy deck is going to be Aromatisse, which will most likely play Prism and Rainbow Energy, Darkrai might be the better choice. The deck already has a huge heap of trouble with Garbodor, and if Fairy Garden is countered at the wrong time, you can get in some really bad trouble. But the comparison is actually pretty close, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was no definitive best retreating method in Fairy decks for a long time. The second stadium in the set is Shadow Circle, which gives any Pokemon with Dark Energy on them no weakness. Darkrai decks already have Verbank and Frozen City to work with, so including a third stadium may be a little clunky. And with a Viltall EX, Darkrai now has coverage against fighting types, so Shadow Circle seems a little worthless for the time being. It may be a nice card for decks that have a really crippling weakness, but we already had Plasma Frigate for that, so this is only slightly better than that. We also have a new special energy in this set. Well, I guess it's not new, but it's still exciting nonetheless. Yes, my friends, Rainbow Energy is back. For those of you unfamiliar with the card, it provides all types of energy, but when you attach this card from your hand to one of your Pokemon, it takes 10 damage. Most of the time, that 10 damage really isn't that impactful, so for decks that can't use Prism or Blend Energy, Rainbow Energy isn't too much of a downgrade. And after the next rotation, both of those special energies are going to be leaving, so Rainbow Energy will be the only option for multi-type energy. Now onto the main course, the EXs. As usual, we'll be going from worst to best. There are quite a few clunkers in this set, so we've got to wait a bit before we get to the good ones. The first EX we've got is Blastoise EX. Its first attack does 30 for 2 colorless and forces both players to switch their active Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon. Its second attack does 120 damage, and you flip a coin. If tails, it takes 30 damage. Really a quite underwhelming EX in pretty much every way. Rapid Spin is alright, but there are much better Pokemon with switching effects than Blastoise EX. But wait, we've forgotten about the new mechanic in this set, Mega Evolutions. Mega Evolutions are EXs that must be placed on top of their regular EX form, but after evolving a Pokemon into a Mega Pokemon, your turn ends. We're taking so much to get out, they're quite powerful. They have monstrous HP, Mega Blastoise being at 220, and they also have really strong attacks. But as far as it looks, they're only going to have one attack. Taking an entire turn to evolve into a Mega is a very big drawback. It really depends on how good the Mega is if it becomes worth it to take the entire turn to get it out. And Blastoise EX's attack is called Hydro Bombard, and does 120 damage and 30 to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Obviously, the Mega form is a huge improvement over the regular EX, but M Blastoise just doesn't seem like it's going to be that worth it. It takes quite a bit of water energy to use it, so you're going to have to play Blastoise to make it work. But if you're going to play Blastoise, you might as well just be using Black Ballista. Maybe with Dusknoir or Greninja you can actually get multiple KOs with Hydro Bombard, but without them, your opponent can usually just keep the Pokemon you hit the first time active, and you'll be wasting damage on a Pokemon. Mr. Mime is also still a heavily played card, which defeats most of the purpose of the card. The only real benefit of M Blastoise EX is its ginormous HP. If you really want to play this card, you should probably go with a tanky approach, with Super Potion, Max Potion, and possibly Gold Potion. But for the most part, this card is pretty much useless. Our next and final EX and MEX pair is Venusaur EX and M Venusaur EX. Venusaur EX's attack does 60 damage for a Grass and 2 Colorless, and poisons the defending Pokemon. If you're playing DCE and Burbank, you can deal a solid 90 damage for a DCE and a Grass. Definitely better than either of Blastoise EX's attacks. Its second attack is a bit more lackluster. For an extra Grass, it does 90 damage and you heal 30 damage from Venusaur. Really underwhelming effect for the amount of energy it costs. But this isn't what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about M Venusaur EX. This Mega is definitely better than Blastoise, but still kinda bad. This one's got 230 HP, which is the most default HP any Pokemon has had to this date. Its attack is called Crisis Vine, which does 120 damage for 3 Grass and a Colorless, and automatically paralyzes and poisons the defending Pokemon. This is actually a very solid attack. With a Burbank and a Muscle Band, you can 1-KO 170 HP EXs. But without the Muscle Band, if your opponent doesn't have a way to switch out of their active Pokemon, or counter the stadium, it will die going into your turn. If you can ever pull that off, you can get several prizes with just one M Venusaur. But obviously, your opponent is going to be able to switch out of your Paralyze or counter your stadium most of the time. But with its 230 HP, you can take a hit or two, and your opponent may end up missing a way to get out of your lock once, and you can start raking in the prizes. Venusaur also doesn't have good enough energy acceleration for you to use Max Potion and Super Potion, so super tanking isn't much of an option. Maybe with Garbodor and Virizion, this could be a very scary deck, but it may be too clunky and too easy to counter for it to ever be very good. Now that we're done with the Megas in this set, let's move on to the regular EXs. Our first one is Emolga EX. And this one's not good either. We'll get to some good EXs eventually, I swear. So Emolga's got 110 HP, which is always a big turnoff. But unlike the other low HP EXs that have something really good to bring to the table that you can't find anywhere else, Emolga doesn't. Its first attack lets you search your deck for a lightning energy and attach it to Emolga, then switch Emolga with one of your bench Pokemon. There aren't very many decks that can run enough lightning energies to make use of this attack, and even the ones that can will usually just run regular Thundurus. The switching effect isn't worth it. Its second attack costs 1 lightning and 2 Colorless, and does 60 damage, or 90 if you choose to discard energy on Emolga. While this attack is good for killing Lugia's and the new Yveltal EX, both of them can easily KO Emolga back, and in Lugia's case, take an extra prize. There aren't that many Pokemon that can do that much damage with only 1 lightning energy in their attack cost, so if you really don't want to use the other decent lightning types, Emolga might work. Raichu in most cases is better lightning coverage, so in all honesty, I think Emolga EX is worthless. So our next EX still isn't very good, but it's at least playable. That card is Skarmory EX. Right off the bat, another Metal EX is an exciting thing, because it can be supported by Plasma Klinklang. But we'll have to look at the card to see if it's any good. Its first attack is called Joust, which costs 2 colorless energy, and does 30 damage and you discard all tools on the defending Pokemon. This card may be taken into some Plasma decks to get rid of as many Silver Mirrors as possible, but you can do that with enough Tool Scrapper anyway. Its second attack is called Tailspin Pile Driver. Pretty cool name, I must say. It costs 2 metal and a colorless, and does 80 damage, and 40 more if your opponent already has a damage counter on them. Since it's a Steel type, you can always play Registeel to soften up all your opponent's attackers. Then with a Muscle Band, you can one-shot 170 HP EXs. But Mr. Mime can always ruin that plan as well. You can also soften up things with Joust and Righteous Edge early on, or maybe even play a Dusknoir line, but for the most part this attack is just kinda eh. I think this card is more playable than Cobalion EX though, so Kling Klang may see a rise in play.
So we're down to the final two.
There must be 2 good EXs in here, right? Well, not exactly. Our next EX is Xerneas EX. It's pretty mediocre, but because fairy types have no good attackers, Xerneas EX actually ends up being the best one. Its first attack does 60 damage to the active and 30 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Its second attack is called X-Blast, does 140 damage, and you can't use X-Blast next turn. While it may seem that Breakthrough and X-Blast have some pretty good synergy, since you can soften up 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, then KO them both with X-Blast, as always, Mr. Mime puts a stop to your plans. Xerneas EX is actually pretty solid against non-EX attackers, and decks that don't play Mr. Mime, but otherwise it's a weak card that's only good because there aren't any other good fairy attackers right now. Now for the final EX in this set. I've mentioned it a few times already, and there's a reason for that. It's a really good card. That card is a Yveltal EX. For 1 Dark and 1 Colorless, it has the attack Evil Ball, which does 20 damage, plus 20 for each energy on both players' active Pokemon. So the attack is basically Mewtwo's X-Ball plus 20. It does cost a Dark Energy instead of just 2 Colorless, but you can also Dark Patch onto a Yveltal, so powering it up becomes incredibly easy. I've played games where I've had an empty field out, and out of nowhere KO'd an 170 HP EX with only 2 energy on it. This attack is frankly absurd. Its second attack is also pretty decent. It's called Y Cyclone, costs 1 Dark and 2 Colorless, does 90 damage, and forces you to move an energy from a Yveltal to one of your bench Pokemon. Against other Yveltals, or if you anticipate a Yveltal dying next turn, you can move an energy off of it onto another attacker and make killing it harder for other Yveltals. This card also has a lightning weakness and a fighting resistance, so Darkrai decks no longer have trouble with fighting types, and most lightning types aren't very good. In my opinion, this card is the unopposed best Pokemon in the set. It's just too strong and too hard to beat without completely altering your deck.
And there you go. There is my Pokemon TCG X and Y set review. Hope you all enjoyed. I personally think there are a lot of interesting cards. I'm very glad this set was released. A lot of stuff to talk about, as you know. A lot of trainers, a lot of Pokemon. A lot of Pokemon I didn't even cover that are still really cool. So if you want to look at all the scans for the entire set, go to Pokebeach.com. Should be on the main page somewhere. If it's not, scroll down and then go to page 2. Eventually find it, or page 3, or whatever. Go find it. It shouldn't be that hard. Very exciting set. Definitely look for building decks in this format. I think will be definitely much more interesting than last set. The only reason the last set's format was better than the set before that is because of the erratas with the first turn and catch up. Now we actually have a good set to go along with these new rules, so that I am very excited about. So soon enough I'll be having a states report, probably sometime in April after I've been to all the states. I am going to have to be missing Delaware State, which is my home state, which is disappointing, but oh well. Obviously got to be missing it for something big, and I am, so don't worry. It's not, whatever, anyway. I will be going to Pennsylvania and either Maryland or New Jersey if they're in the middle weekend. I still don't know if those results are up yet. I will check that soon, or if when those states, what states are in the middle weekend of states, but yeah, I'll be going to something that week. Yeah, before that I'll probably be doing some rogue deck discussions, possibly some not so rogue deck discussions. We'll see. I definitely got plenty of stuff in this set to talk about. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for more Pokemon videos in the future. Later.